We're solving the proportion. Do you remember how to solve proportions? No. Anyone? Anyone? Yeah. Yeah, you can cross. This is where you can cross multiply. So you don't cross multiply when you're actually multiplying fractions. You can cross multiply here. So we multiply the diagonals together. So I do 8 times x is 8x. And then 6 times 12, which is 72. So we cross multiply and then we set them equal. And then that becomes a one-step equation. Now this isn't algebra class, we're not going to be solving a ton of equations, but a one-step equation is probably doable, or I think should be doable. And I think I've seen most of you guys through algebra that I know you can solve a one-step equation. So this is being multiplied, so instead I'm going to divide by 8, and I'm going to find out x is 9. So being able to solve a pretty simple proportion is what we're doing here. So hopefully solved it correctly. So x is 9. Now there are other ways you probably could have came up with it. You could have maybe simplified the fraction a little bit or something. If you realize that maybe like 8 over 12 becomes like 2 over 3, and then kind of try to figure it out that way. There's a few different ways you could do it. This is probably the easiest, most straightforward way as you're going through these. Okay? This proportion is going to come up when we're working with percents. So percents and proportions go pretty closely together. We're only going to use this a little bit today, but for the most part, just being comfortable with converting back and forth and being able to solve that. Today, actually, I'm a little nervous that I didn't put enough in our notes that we're going to run like out of things to talk about, because I think today should be pretty easy. But stop me if you don't remember. We're going to do some practice with whiteboards today. We can go outside to do it if you'd like. I don't think it's rainy out there. Looks a little gloomier than it was before, but we'll do some practice kind of working between the different types of percent counts. You gave her like a dirty look for sneezing. God bless you. Oh, I thought she sneezed and you looked back like, why are you sneezing? So the word percent kind of tries to explain why percents are what they are. It's per 100. So the word percent. The word cent means like 100 and like kind of it's like origin. So like when you see your percentage on a test, if you got a 92% on the test, that means had there been 100 questions, you would have gotten 92 of them right out of 100. So when you talk about like getting a percentage in the 90s, that's a lot if there were 100 questions on the test. Typically there aren't 100 questions on the test, but we stick with this per 100, so we all have a standard way to like compare these numbers. So they want us to write this percent as a fraction in simplest form. So they're taking a percent, so anytime you see that percent symbol, you can like basically say out of 100. So 62 out of 100. So we're going to take that percentage and put it over 100. So whatever that percentage, and then we're just going to simplify that. So they want it as a fraction in simplest form. So just be careful what they're asking for in each of these parts. So 62% is 62 out of 100. So again, it's fine if you guys grab your calculator to simplify that, because 62 is a pretty big number. And then did you switch, you had to do some conversions? So he likes using all the different buttons that do all the different conversions. And I don't know if it really saves him any time as much as it's just what he does, and that's fine. If you get it another way, I'm not like gonna freak out about like if he didn't write 62 out of 100. But you can divide that by, I believe, just 2, right? No, it should be more than that. Or no, that's 31 over 50. I took a minute, I was thinking 36 for some reason. It's 31 out of 50. So that would be that simplified fraction. So then we have 5 out of 100. So that's simplified fraction. Now there's a couple here that are a little bit wonkier, like kind of strange. So actually maybe let's start with the 230. So 230 out of 100, bless you. I dropped the zeros out, so it ends up being 23 out of 10. If for whatever reason you switch that to a mixed number, on the test I started taking off, if I said to leave it improper and you change it to a mixed number, I started taking off, like if you were doing something else with it, then I just left it because I realized it's equivalent. So that'd be like 2 3/10 if you did it that way. But the decimal's a little bit weird. Any thoughts on how to break that as a fraction in simplest?
Multiply by 10.
Multiply by 10. So it become, so we don't like that decimal. So we're gonna, yeah, so we're gonna multiply by 10 and move the decimal over one place. 1,000. But we're not done yet because that's not simplest form. That can be divided by 2 or 4 maybe? 2? Not by 4, you said?
No.
So 2?
Yeah.
So what is that going to be? 30? Oh, 39 over 50?
500.
500. Oh yeah, 500 because it was 1,000.
Yeah.
Is that it?
The small numbers here.
So yeah, the decimals are a little bit strange, but if you think back to it, 39 out of 500, that's a pretty small percent, and 7.8 is a small percentage. Like if that's what you got on your test, I think we're going to be having words on Friday. So I mean, it's, you know, definitely want to make sure we're comfortable with the size of those numbers. I actually think these are one of the tougher ones we're going to start with. Now we're writing a percent as a decimal. So this one, I'm going to try and explain the why behind it just so you understand why you do what you do. But at the same time, it actually is probably just easy to do this kind of rule that goes with this. So we change it to a decimal by taking that number and dividing by 100. So the percent over 100, but then we're going to write that as a decimal. What's the trick though with dividing by 100? Does anyone know what the rule is when you divide something by 100? Yeah.
Move the decimal point forward 2 places.
Yeah, so you actually make the number like smaller, move it like to the left 2 decimal places, because dividing by 100 or multiplying by 100, anything that's like multiples of 10 is really easy to do without a calculator. So we're just going to move the decimal over 2 times to the left. So like you're just moving that decimal so that it moves over. So move decimal. Dividing by 100. So in all of these, unless they have the decimal there already, where do we assume the decimal is? At the end, behind, yep. So like here it would be. So we're going to move it over 2 times. Now once we change it from a decimal to a percent to a decimal, you should drop that percentage symbol off. So just being careful that you don't continue to write the percentage, otherwise we're making this more complicated. So this is 0.16. And I'm just going to put a 0 there. I'm going to put a 0. I'm going to put a 0 there as like a placeholder to kind of like, so you can tell that like we have that decimal there. So then the 8 point, we move it over twice. And so if you have a calculator that doesn't have a percent on it, or you're working with a number as a percentage, it's actually easier kind of to use the decimal version of it. That one ends up being 1.25, and then this one ends up being a very small number. Okay. So percent to decimal, we're essentially dividing by 100. Now we're going to go the other way, and hopefully you realize that maybe the other way should be just as easy. So if I'm going from percent to decimal, I move it to the left 2 places. What do you think about decimal to percent? I'm going to move it to the right 2 places now. So now we're going to do kind of times 100. And then if we're writing it as a percent, we have to make sure we use the percent symbol. As much as it seems like picky, like whether or not it's there or not, it is important. So we have to use that percent symbol. So move it to the right 2 times. So we have our 72% there. I realize with my board I probably need to make the percents kind of big. I always question the over 100%. It is possible to do over 100%. I am annoyed when people say I'm giving 110% effort, because like that seems, you know, like why don't you go with 115% effort then? But over 100% is something that comes up, especially when we're talking about marking something up and increasing. Like, so if I'm talking about the price increase of gas over the past, you know, however many months, it's going to go over 100% because it's,
It'll be numbers.
yeah, yeah. Or when you talk about marking something up at like a store or something like that, they use percentages over 100. Now we're going to write a fraction as a percent. So this kind of might be a little bit trickier, kind of depending on how you guys want to go about it. A couple of different things you guys can do. I can show you kind of a couple different ways with this. One of them is to use the percent proportion, which we haven't really technically talked about yet. So I'm switching it to a percent. So I take my fraction, and I set it equal to the percent over 100, which I don't know what that is yet. So you can do it that way. So I can say this would equal x over 100. And you can set this up as cross multiplying, setting equal. Yep.
There's a button for it too.
There's a button for it too, yeah. There's a button for everything on these calculators.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, so it actually says like, yeah, there's like an arrow over to a percentage.
Yeah.
It's probably the easiest way.
Yeah.
So 2/5 over to a percent. Otherwise, if you don't have the fancy schmancy calculator, you're gonna go steal one, but no. Like, you have 2 over 5, I can change that to a decimal and then change it to a percent. There's a couple of, you know, we changed fractions over to decimals. I divide 2 by 5 and then switch it. You could do decimal to percent. It's really up to you guys, however you guys want to go about it, but 2 over 5 as a decimal is 0.4. So then as a percent, it ends up being 40%. So being able to make those conversions. Now 7 over 10, I would not need to look that one up. That's when I just know I'm just going to put a 0 on the top and bottom. So using some logic sometimes is a good idea. I know I love when our tests are out of 50. Because of the fact that then it's really easy to calculate the percentage. I just double it. So it just makes it a little bit quicker. I don't, but like yesterday's it were out of 51. So that was like annoying enough that I had to like check what the percent was because I knew it was close to doubling it, but not quite.
You just
I know, but I love them all, so I couldn't get rid of one. So,
yeah, 50, yeah.
So, then like 17 over 38. So again, you could change it to a decimal first. I don't know if these blue ones do, or if they do, I don't know how to do it.
Nice to do.
Yeah.
I'm good at being calculated.
believe it's like 44.7. Is that what you guys got for this one?
7.4.
So we rounded to the 10th place, it'd be 7, because 7.4 would tell me to just get rid of that 4. And now 1 5/8, I know this one's going to be over 100. And then 5/8. So it changed that number. I know, I think what it does is like, so if I was putting 44.7 in as a percent, then it would change it to my decimal. That's all I think this one does.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So this one ends up being 162.5, I believe. If you're having any issues like figuring it out in your calculator, let me know. Like, so not saying like everything's fine because everyone else seems to be doing fine. Like, I don't want to speak up. You know, we have time to work on things. Make sure you guys are asking. The last one is fractional percent to a decimal, which is kind of a weird one. I don't see this come up very often where you have a fractional percent.
I don't like it.
Yeah, it's weird. So, because that's already a decimal, 7/8 is already a number under 1, and then we're changing it to a decimal as well. This is actually a time I think this calculator does okay with it. So it's going to be a very small number because you have to first change it to a decimal, and then change that to change it to a, what am I trying to say here? 7/8. So it's a very small number. So as a decimal,
We're starting in the thousands.
yeah, it's like, yeah, it's this tiny. Because it is less than 1%. So like if we're talking about very small percentages of things, this would be a number we do, like when we say something. Yeah.
I got 0.875.
Oh,
So,
decimal 2 places.
so you still need to change it to a percent. So now you have to hit percent after that. Yeah, it's like that little button there. So second and then that. So once you get so you got 7/8 and you got 0.875, then you have to change that to a percent, which means you have to divide it by 100 still. So 2/9, so like essentially what this was is 0.875%, and then I still had to move it over 2 times. Same thing like this. This is 0.2 repeating. Don't do that. 0.2 repeat.
No.
Hi, how are you? 2 repeating. And then I need to change that to a decimal. So it's 0.002. Okay. All right. So do you want to do whiteboards outside or in?
Outside.
That's
It's much better.